Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
Getting tested for the virus isn't usually controversial, but the State Department says they learned U.S. diplomats in China were being tested in a way that they had a problem with. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on what happened and China's response.
You ever gotten tested for COVID-19? Well, the pictures don't look pleasant. The swab either goes up your nose or inside your throat. But you may have heard China's got another method, the anal swab. And a few unlucky state diplomats got the treatment, in air apparently. The State Department told the Epoch Times, "We never agreed to this kind of testing and protested directly to China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs when we learned that some staff were subject to it and that diplomatic personnel are exempt from the testing requirement." Chinese authorities claim that the anal swab is superior to the nasal or throat methods. Here's a widely circulated clip of what it might look like. China's foreign ministry spokesperson denied ever requiring U.S. diplomats to take this test. Either way, superior or not, the Justice Department told their colleagues to turn it down, saying they're committed to keeping them and their families safe while preserving their dignity. Now let's go into the UK variant, the B.1.1.7. If you remember, some time ago, the CDC estimated that this variant made up 1 to 4% of U.S. cases. That's gone up, at minimum, by 6%. Here's the CDC director.
Our estimates now indicate that B.1.1.7 accounts for approximately 10% of cases in the United States, up from 1 to 4% a few weeks ago.
The CDC expects this virus to dominate other variants in the country. They say this one's believed to be 50% more contagious. So how's the UK dealing with this variant? On Friday, a Cambridge University hospital published a study, not yet peer-reviewed, that suggests that one shot of the Pfizer vaccine gave hospital staff a lot of protection. Here's the doctor who led the study.
What we found was that about 2 weeks after a single dose of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, hospital staff became 4 times less likely to become infected with coronavirus.
Lastly, a reporter asked Dr. Fauci to specify, when will we be out of the woods and have the conditions to return to the pre-pandemic normal? Here's his answer.
Yeah, we're looking at the curve that Dr. Walensky showed. Unfortunately, looks like it's kind of stopped there at around 70,000 to go all the way down so that the test positivity is well less than 10% when you really are in the blue zone throughout the entire country.
The thing is, we're already there. Take a look at this, straight from the CDC's website. Below 10% nationally, and the whole map is blue, but some states are darker than others, meaning they have higher positivity rates. He did say well below 10%. The question now is how far below 10%? Back to you, Steph.
Americans are buying guns like never before. Firearm purchases hit an all-time high in January. Meanwhile, House Democrats are pushing President Biden to do more on gun control. More on that by NTD's Allison Lee.
According to the latest figures from the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System, background checks for firearm purchases hit a record high in January. The FBI processed a whopping 4.3 million background checks in a single month. That's close to a 60% increase compared to January 2020, and nearly double the figure from January 2019. Compared to December 2020, it's an increase of almost 10%. The hike in gun sales in January comes after they rose to an all-time high last year. In 2020, the FBI processed 40% more background checks than in 2019. Experts believe the surge in 2020 was due to pandemic anxiety, social unrest, and political uncertainty. And it's not just existing gun owners who are buying more firearms. A survey from 2020 shows that 40% of the guns sold from January to April last year were bought by first-time buyers. At the same time, some Democrat House members are pushing President Biden to do more about gun control. In a letter addressed to the president on Friday, 36 House Democrats requested that Biden appoint a national gun violence director. They say this will lead to better coordination among federal agencies that deal with gun violence. The lawmakers say they hope to see firearm deaths and injuries cut by half over the next 10 years. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
Joe Biden's often said he would raise taxes on corporates, but a new think tank report says that would be bad news for the economy, especially as it's trying to bounce back from the pandemic. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
President Biden and some lawmakers in Congress proposed several changes to the country's tax code. One is raising the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. The Tax Foundation found the tax hike would eliminate over 150,000 jobs, lower wages by 0.7%, and reduce long-run economic output by 0.8%.
A big portion of these corporate tax increases will affect workers' wages, and it will affect the retirement and investment accounts of everyday Americans. Something like 40% of corporate stocks are owned by workers and by middle-class Americans. And so they may see a reduced value of those accounts if you raise those rates too far.
After the tax cuts in 2017, companies big and small were incentivized to make long-term investments and increase their workers' wages. The Tax Foundation said this 180-degree turn in tax policy would cause uncertainty among companies, which will stop them from making investments. It will also cause about a 1.5% drop in after-tax income for the bottom 20% of income earners.
And so while that may not seem like a lot in percentage terms, it's actually a pretty significant amount for someone who is of low income, who has potentially been struggling throughout the pandemic and trying to stay afloat and wants to improve their life coming out of the pandemic and maximizing their economic opportunity.
The Tax Foundation said the purpose of their report is to caution policymakers from bad ideas, but it also contains good ideas that may get bipartisan interest in the long run.
Our advice for policymakers is not to rush into tax increases right now, to ensure that we can have a robust recovery, which will be really important over the next year as the public health situation improves and folks get back to work and the economy reopens.
On the other hand, the tax hike would raise over $800 billion in tax revenue over the next 10 years. The Tax Foundation suspects the revenue will go to additional spending on infrastructure and research and development. Don Tran, NTD News.
President Biden's pick for U.S. trade representative is calling China a rival. She lays out her strategy for dealing with Beijing. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
President Biden's nominee for U.S. trade representative is calling China a rival, a trade partner, and an outsized player. She says she wants to work with allies in dealing with Beijing.
I previously served as America's chief enforcer against China's unfair trade practices. I know firsthand how critically important it is that we have a strategic and coherent plan for holding China accountable to its promises and effectively competing with its model of state-directed economics.
Nominee Katherine Tai's comments signal that the Biden administration has no plans to roll back the strict tariffs imposed by former President Donald Trump. That's in contrast to what Biden said on the campaign trail. The Trump administration placed tariffs on $360 billion worth of Chinese goods, including steel and aluminum. It was a response to the regime's expansive state-sanctioned campaign to steal U.S. intellectual property. Tai acknowledged the problems with Chinese steel and aluminum, adding that all options need to be explored in dealing with China.